Welcome, everyone, to the Town of Los Gatos April 3rd Council meeting. This evening, Vice Mayor Leonardis is a little under the weather, so he'll be joining us by phone and watching us on KCAT. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Marika Sayak.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Rob Rennie.
Here. All right. So next up, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if I could have Yuov Manor join me, please. Or if you can correct me if I didn't get the name quite right. So please come up. So stand right here where they can see us at home also. We're on TV at home. So it's pronounced Yuov? Yoav Manor is a fifth grader at Van Meter School. It says you play touch football, basketball, running, math, reading, and goofing around with friends and siblings. I like that goofing around part. That sounds like fun. It says for community service, this is your second year with the K-Kids Club at Van Meter, and you're very excited to be part of the K-Kids family. That's sponsored by the Kiwanis Club, it looks like, our local chapter here. All right, so let's ask everybody to stand, please. And we're going to face the flag over here, and I'm going to give you the mic, and then you get us started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Okay, so thank Marcia. Shake her hand. And then Rita and Barbara. Oh. And a gift for you too. Okay, so next up we're going to have poetry readings. I guess this is, I think, the 7th year that we've been doing poetry readings, and I'm going to invite Joanne Talsforth up here to introduce the students. I guess Joanne was a former arts coordinator at the Los Gatos Union School District, and now that you're retired from the Planning Commission, you're spending more time chairing things like Art Now and helping to bring the kids to do poetry for us. So take it away.
Thank you very much. That was very nice of you. Let me get this up here. This is probably one of my favorite days of the year. It's my pleasure as a community arts advocate to present you with this 7th year that Fisher Middle School and the Poetry in the Chambers has been participating. And it's my pleasure to introduce this year's winning poets from Fisher's Middle School 8th grade English class and Spanish class. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, the wonderful teachers, the 8th grade teachers, Sarah Landry, Julia Abb, and Grace Donatelli Sordo, the Spanish teacher, who participate every year in this poetry. This year's original poems capture the students' perspectives about my life, my town. Students considered, what roots me to this place? What is this town to me? And we would like you to consider tonight's poems a map that takes us on a personal journey of experiences, places, food, friends, and family, revealing perspectives and connections that bind us as a community. And here tonight to read, we'll start off with Shara, Sarma, and Kate, who will read in Spanish and English.
Hello, I am Sarah Sharma and I will be reading my poem, De Donde Soy Yo. I wrote this Spanish poem about Los Gatos because Spanish culture is very important to this town and to me. And here is Kate.
I'm Kate Mittelhauser, and I'll be reading the English translation of her poem Stanza by Stanza.
¿De dónde soy yo?
Where I am from.
Yo soy de Los Gatos, un lugar bonito, divertido y diferente. Los Gatos es un pueblo muy único.
I am from Los Gatos, a beautiful and different place. Los Gatos is a very unique town.
Yo soy de mis escuelas, Fisher y Blossom Hill, donde conozco nuevos y viejos amigos, y mis maestros enseñan lecciones para la clase y para la vida.
I am from my schools, Fisher and Blossom Hill, where I meet new and old friends, and my teachers teach lessons for class and for life.
Yo vengo de la gente de Los Gatos, que es amable, bondadosa y cariñosa, y de muchas culturas diferentes.
I come from the people of Los Gatos, who are kind, caring, and loving, and are from many different cultures.
Yo vengo de la comida de Los Gatos, mis restaurantes favoritos y nuevos restaurantes. Ambos tienen cultura y amor en la comida.
I come from the food in Los Gatos. My favorite restaurants and new restaurants both have culture and love in the food.
Yo vengo de los deportes de Los Gatos, porque juego al fútbol y al softball para los equipos de Los Gatos.
I come from the sports in Los Gatos because I play softball and soccer for the teams in Los Gatos.
Yo vengo de la felicidad, la tristeza y la ira, y todas las emociones yo siento aquí.
I come from the happiness, the sadness, the anger, and all of the emotions I feel here.
Yo vengo de todo mi tiempo en Los Gatos, tiempo para estudiar, tiempo para divertirme, todo el tiempo perdido.
I come from all of my time in Los Gatos, the time to study, the time for fun, all of the time here.
Yo vengo del tiempo que voy a pasar aquí, desde la escuela secundaria y hasta la viejez. Con suerte, voy a pasar toda mi vida en este pueblo.
I come from the time I will spend here, from high school to old age. Hopefully, I spend all my life here.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Juliet Boyven, and I'll be presenting my poem called This Town. I remember, not that long back, moving from whatever, moving from my friends, my town, my country. I was going across the ocean, to a place unknown to me. I only knew of what I heard of. It was something like, oh America, great opportunities. Oh America, great weather. Oh America, great language. I was scared and alone. But I met new people in this new town. These people took me for how weird I am. We had some Americans, a Greek person, a Mexican, an Italian, and a French person. All this in this small town called Los Gatos. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Emma Rogers, and the poem I wrote is called Safe. Black, skinny, timid, a stray cat pokes his head out of the bush he calls home. He looks right. Down the boulevard, he can see the hospital, brightly lit, welcoming anyone. He looks left, catching a whiff of Panera Bread's loaves on the cool evening breeze. He takes a cautious step out of the brush and shivers as the wind ruffles his fur. As he tries to cross the busy street, a car catches him in its headlights. The cat yowls, bracing himself for impact, regretting ever leaving the safety of his bush. But the car stops. The driver is kind enough to wave the cat forward, a smile on her face. The small cat purrs and trots across the street to the safer area on the other side, lush and secluded. As darkness encases the town, the cat purrs himself to sleep. safe at last. Hello, my name is Lucy Klarich. I made a poem entitled Emerald River. I run away from my troubles, picking up my shoes and heading towards the memory-bound trail. Vasona is bright in the spring, luscious and blooming, puffy white clouds and grand oak trees. I hear off in the distance little children at play, swinging on the swing set or on the Air Force plane. The train tracks circle a grassy green meadow with dewdrops like silver orbs, fragile. I pass an old painter. He is painting the river. It is beautiful, green, like emerald grass on the side of my memory-bound trail. He stands so still, caressing a canvas with but a single brush and a quill. Lines that make a scene, so delicate, like a feather that falls until it withers. But for what, I can't say. He stands there all day, in the sun painting on and on. But for what is the purpose of keeping silent and still, if no one is there to watch you till the sun is gone and the world stills?
You know what? I have to thank you. That was beautiful. I hope that you all appreciated it, and I hope that maybe you identified with some of the places they talked about and the feelings they had. Thank you. Until next year.
Thank you, Joanne, and students. That was very inspiring. So next up, we have a presentation, Our Town by Marina Chislett. Wait just a sec. Let the people with the noise clear a little bit. And maybe they could close the doors. Thank you, Monica. Okay, go ahead.
All right. My name is Marina Chislett. I'm the Environmental Program Specialist with the Town of Los Gatos. And tonight I'm going to be doing an Our Town presentation on Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month. So as many of you already know, April is Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month, and this year the Parks and Public Works Department has decided to release the Keep Los Gatos Beautiful Month activity book. This activity book will include such things as family activities, town sustainability information, residential sustainability resources, a calendar of events for the month of April, and more. So these next two slides just include some examples of what you'll find inside of the activity book. So for family activities, we have things like leaf rubbing, which we encourage families to try in our Los Gatos parks. We also have a wide variety of sustainable projects that families could try at home. And then we have fun activities like a crossword and a word search that is relevant to Los Gatos. For sustainability information, we have what the town is doing to be sustainable, which includes such things as our Green Business Certification at our facilities, our annual Spring into Green event that's coming up on April 22nd, and our Downtown Recycling Expansion Program, and more. For residential sustainability resources, we have such things as a WaterWise calculator that allows residents to identify their indoor and outdoor water use. We also have information on our new energy savings toolkits that are available for checkout in the Los Gatos Library. And then we have helpful video tutorials that, for example, could help residents detect a leak in their house and have ways to fix it. So this full activity book is available on the Growing Greener section of the Los Gatos website. And if you have any further information or questions that you'd like to ask me, feel free to contact me directly. But I'll also be happy to answer any further questions at this time as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Don't see any. Thank you, Marina. Okay, next up, closed session report, Mr. Schultz.
Yes, good evening. Prior to tonight's session, councilmen in closed session to discuss real property negotiations. No action was taken that requires reporting under the Brown Act.
Thank you. Next up, council manager matters, starting with Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the past 2 weeks since our last council meeting, I had no committee meetings. However, I had several meetings with members of our community dealing with either development or the town finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sack.
Thank you. Since our last public hearing, I attended 2 meetings on behalf of the town. The first is a teacher town hall meeting that looks at providing housing for teachers and others in the workforce. I also attended, in addition to the mayor, Assembly District 28's celebration for Woman of the Year, who is Celeste Walker, who's a business owner in Campbell.
Thank you. And in addition to that, I also attended State School Superintendent Torleson's cocktail reception that had many school board members. It was in and many other electeds, and that was locally here. On the 27th of March, I attended the LAFCO workshop where we learned a lot about the history of LAFCO and our county. 3/28, I attended the local government days at Charge Point with the town manager. Also, there was most of the West Valley mayors were there and some other council members and many members of business. Discussions were around the need for affordable housing and also traffic solutions that are needed. On 3/28, I attended the West Valley Mayor's Lunch with the town manager, and the discussion topic was emergency preparedness. And then on 3/29, I did the welcome speech for the New Moo Art Now High School art competition. That's it for me. Vice Mayor Leonardis, do you have anything to share?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rennie. This past weekend, I helped out the Easter Bunny with the Hippity Hop egg hunt at Oak Meadow Park. And last week, I hosted a delegation of Japanese students and delegates from the city of Hitoyoshi, Japan. And they have visited Los Gatos a couple times, but we went around the town and we took photos in front of the high school and visited the library, and we enjoyed the downtown and Main Street burgers and such. They are interested in possibly becoming a sister city. So I will be following up with the town manager about that process. And that's all I have to report.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
I have nothing to report.
All right. Town manager matters.
Thank you. I have 3 items for you this evening. First of all, we've extended the adult recruitment for the available commissions. Applications are now due on April 25th. Our Youth Commission recruitment is continuing, and if you're interested, those applications are due on May 4th. And finally, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you our new police chief, Chief Peter DeSena. Welcome.
I'm unsure if we caught him on camera or not, but I'm sure the citizens will see him around town. Okay, so next up is our consent agenda. Would any member of the council wish to pull an item from consent? Mr. Leonardis, anything from you?
No, sir.
All right. Would any member of the public wish to pull an item from consent? Seeing none, I'll come back to council for a motion. Councilmember Jensen.
I will move approval of the consent calendar, now consisting of items 1 through 6 with a special mention. Thank you, PPW, and whoever's responsible for the grant for the smart signals, because this is one of my little pet projects. So thank you for making sure that that's going to happen in Los Gatos. I think it can have a really, hopefully, positive effect on our traffic. So that's my motion to approve the consent.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a second from Councilmember Sayak. Any further discussions? Seeing none, I need a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Spector.
Yes on everything, but a no on 6.
Councilmember Sayak.
Yes.
Mayor Rennie.
Yes on everything?
Vice Mayor Leonardis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
Okay, most of them pass unanimously with one no on item number 6, I think it was. Okay, so next up is item number 7, which is sorry. Thank you. Going too quickly. Next up is verbal communication. At this point, anybody can speak to us for 3 minutes on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So first up, I have Ann Robinson.
Ann Robinson, Charter Oaks. Tonight I'm speaking about the Los Gatos Creek Trail between Lark Avenue and the north end of Charter Oaks Drive. The pedestrian and bicycle traffic on the Creek Trail has significantly increased over the past couple of years, partially because of the Netflix development. Currently along this stretch of Creek Trail, there are 14 pathways connecting the Creek Trail to Charter Oaks Drive. 4 are asphalt pathways and 10 are dirt pathways. 4 of the pathways connect the adjacent parking lots of the Creek Trail, or to the Creek Trail. The problem is that we have cyclists and pedestrians coming on and off the trail at multiple points along Charter Oaks Drive. This is a safety issue. Many cyclists and pedestrians do not pay attention to the vehicle traffic along Charter Oaks Drive. They come out between parked cars on cell phones, not looking. Sometimes there's a group of people in the middle of the road with strollers. Families with kids on bikes are riding against traffic. Because of the past flooding, there are detour signs set up to direct trail traffic around the area of the trail that used to be flooded. The problem with the detour signs for the trail traffic going south towards Los Gatos is that there is no second detour sign to get them back on the trail after they pass the part of the trail that used to be flooded. The trail is now clear, so the detour signs should be removed. The most dangerous dirt pathway is the one closest to Lark Avenue. There was an incident where a resident almost hit a child on a bicycle who was not looking while coming off the curb onto Charter Oaks Drive, and the child actually fell off their bike in front of the car. Cars coming onto Charter Oaks Drive from Lark Avenue are not prepared for people coming off the trail. It is very dangerous. The many dirt pathways connecting the Creek Trail to Charter Oaks Drive are not designated pathways and need to be blocked before someone gets hurt or killed. Spring is upon us and the trail traffic is getting heavier. I'm here to ask for your help to solve this problem. One idea I had is to install a wood rail fence along the trail from Lark Avenue to the end of Charter Oaks Drive, with openings in the fence to get on and off the trail at the 2 asphalt pathways that go directly to the adjacent parking lots along Charter Oaks Drive. A second idea is to put a chain across the opening that allows service vehicles entry onto the Creek Trail at the north end of Charter Oaks Drive. My third idea is to put signs on the trail at the north and south end of Charter Oaks Drive that say, please stay on the trail. Los Gatos still has the $350,000 from the Netflix settlement for impacts from the development. I believe the Netflix employees have significantly increased the trail traffic along Charter Oaks Drive, and this would be an appropriate use of those funds. We need to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists who use the trail and for drivers on Charter Oaks Drive. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Robinson? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I guess could I ask the town manager if we could put this on council referral and have staff think about it and respond?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So next up I have, for verbal communications, I'm going to put my glasses on, make sure I read it correctly, Kim Snyder and Austin Trillo.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Snyder. I'm the Operations and Membership Manager for New Museum Los Gatos, or NewMu, and this is my colleague Austin Trillo, who works with us as well. I'm just here to make a programming announcement because April is filled with a lot of exciting events for us. We're having our largest fundraiser on April 22nd or 21st and 22nd. It'll be our Celebrate History Weekend, and we'll be featuring our 23rd annual Historic Homes Tour. We'll have 7 homes in the Johnson Avenue neighborhood, and the tour should be pretty walkable this year, which is really exciting. We'll also have a pit stop at the Los Gatos, or the History Club of Los Gatos, and they'll be having some lunches that you can pick up and waters. So I hope that you all can come out and support us. Additionally, we'll be having a bigger bash on April 22nd, and this is a new event for us. It'll be an evening full of fundraising, so we'll be having wine, desserts, a featured speaker, and there'll be a buffet dinner. So I hope all of you will be able to join us, and you can find out more on our website at newmulosgatos.org. And if you have any questions, let us know. And then if you haven't been to the museum, we're located right above you guys at 106 East Main Street, so I'd encourage everyone to stop by that hasn't before. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay, that's what he was here for, to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay, so next up I have Carolyn Del Vecchio.
I was back again about the Forbes meal for the kids, about putting a grill in and a couple pool tables, maybe some computers. A year ago, I was walking by and coming over the bridge there, and the kids hang out there, so that's where I came up with the idea. And I spoke with a friend of mine, Bob. He's 83 years old, and he does the sound for Terry here at the roasting company for her open mic night. And he said there was a teen center there, and it got a little wild, so that had been many, many moons ago. I'm thinking way back to the 80s, because I can remember as far back as the earthquake, and I don't remember a teen center there. So I don't know how far back he's talking. But and the main library to have music lessons for the kids from Eastfield, Ming Kwong. I'm a producer, and my daddy played with the Dorsey Brothers and was the bass player on the Ray Stevens Show. So I had the pleasure of growing up with Carlos Santana and Janis Joplin and John Lee Hooker, and it was quite a joy. And the music soothes the pain for the children, because they're going through a lot of pain when they're not with their parents. So I have a friend of mine, Ruth, to teach music, and she sings with her 12-year-old daughter and her 9-year-old daughter and has a full band. And I have a friend of mine that has a master's degree. I wanted him to help me run it. And I wanted to put a petting zoo in the parking lot and put some artwork on the inside and put artwork on the back and maybe put a little coffee house. I was thinking about maybe Mamas and the Papas place, the real Mamas and the Papas. I had the pleasure of growing up with them in San Francisco at a place called the Jazz Workshop. But the museums are empty and they're not being used at the moment, so it would be a great thing to take the kids off the streets, and and one follows the other, and it would be a good thing to keep them away from cigarettes, keep them away from drugs, keep them away from the wrong people, and make new friends.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No.
None for you either. Thank you. Thank you.
Just that Steve Wozniak is a friend of mine, and he will help us supply the computers for the kids.
All right, thank you. And I can say in the near future, our staff's going to be thinking about what we're going to do with Forbes Mill, and they'll take your considerations into consideration. All right, so I have no more cards for verbal communication. Anybody else wish to address us? Seeing none, I will close verbal communication, and then we'll move on to item number 7.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Jennifer Armour, Senior Planner. Tonight we're continuing the review of the appeal of the Planning Commission denial, the project proposed by Shane Arters and LP Acquisitions to build a new office building at the corner of Los Gatos, Saratoga Road, and Alberta Way. On March 20th, you heard the applicant's presentation and public comments and completed your questions of the applicant and their team and closed the public hearing. Town staff has asked consultants hired by the town to be available tonight to answer any technical questions you may have. So in addition to planning and Parks and Public Works staff, we also have representatives from Amick Foster Wheeler, the town's geotechnical consultant, and TJKM, the town's traffic consultant. This concludes staff's presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council members to begin? So this is a continuation from our last meeting. If you recall, the last thing we did was finish verbal communication and close verbal communication. So let me start at this point to ask for disclosures from council members. If Councilmember Spector would start us off, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the time frame that the council has considered this item, including last year, I have met twice with representatives of the neighborhood community, and I have met 3 times with members of the development community or the developers, and there was no information in any of those meetings that was different than what we have in our report.
Councilmember Sayak.
Okay. Similar to Councilmember Spector, I did have a chance to meet with community members that live in Alberta Way twice, and I've also had a chance to meet with the applicant's team twice. And similar to Councilmember Spector, there is nothing that has been disclosed in those meetings that's not contained in our staff report.
Okay, thank you. Similar for me, I believe I've met with community members twice and the applicants 3 times. Again, most of the information is included. I also did my own field trips. I visited several times to observe the traffic, and I actually sat there for an hour 3 different times counting cars, making hash marks on a piece of paper. And I visited several other times where I was counting the cars in the Alberta Oaks office building, which is the one at the end, to try to understand at what rate they come in. And as part of disclosures, we're supposed to share information that we've learned, so obviously other council members didn't have that. So I have provided a summary of my observations, which all the council members have. Thank you. Vice Mayor Leonardis, anything to disclose?
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. Just what's in the record, I've reviewed all the materials, I read all the latest correspondence and the letters. And I did meet with the applicant last fall. So that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Similar to other members of the council, I've met with the applicants twice. I've met with members of the community twice to discuss this project. I also either walk or drive by the site every day.
Thank you. Okay. So disclosures. Next is any more questions for staff from council? Okay. Well, I did have a few questions actually related to traffic. This is probably for the town engineer or town traffic engineer. So there's been discussion of the EIR being denied because the traffic report wasn't correct. And my understanding is we have a policy that tells us when traffic should be counted and how we calculate it. Is that correct?
Thank you, Lisa Peterson, town engineer. So yes, the town does have a traffic impact policy, and in that policy, it tells us at what point we require a traffic impact analysis. It needs to meet certain criteria as far as traffic counts go, and at that point, the developer is required to develop a traffic impact analysis, which they were for this project.
And so they followed our policies in the development of this traffic impact analysis?
That's correct.
Okay, so probably follow on for the town attorney. Does the planning, I'll ask it in a couple steps, does the planning commission have the discretion to ignore the policy?
No, the requirement of the Planning Commission should look at all our rules and regulations that are in place and apply those policies and regulations for each and every project.
So can they deny an EIR based on a traffic report that followed the policy?
I think that's a very broad question. In this case, Planning Commission didn't even get to the issue of whether the EIR was adequate or not, so they didn't deny it. But in a broad context, no, a Planning Commission and the council shouldn't deny a project based on the fact that it did not follow a policy that was in place.
And so that was my follow-on. The council doesn't have the discretion to deny it if it's following the policy also.
That's correct.
And does the council have the discretion to change the policy?
Certainly has the ability to change the policy at any time, but not for a project that's already followed that
Change
policy.
the policy, but not in the middle of a project.
Correct.
Okay. So that was my questions on the EIR, because we had certainly discussion at Planning Commission about this and comments from public. Any other questions from council members? Councilmember Sack.
Okay, so this is again for the traffic engineer. So this is specific to attachment 26, which is the mayor's traffic count data. I just want to make sure I understand. In it, there was some discussion of the difference between the IT versions, 9 and 10, one being higher than the other. If you could just clarify, which one do we need to be using? So that's the first question. And then the second is there a difference between when the application was... Let's start with the first question.
Thank you. So regarding your first question, our traffic impact policy does say that the applications that come in that are required to provide a traffic impact analysis need to follow the most recent edition of ITE. So at the time that this application was put in, the most recent edition of ITE was the 9th edition. Since then, ITE has come out with a new edition. It's called the 10th edition.
Okay, so given that, is there anything that differs from the application material that we reviewed at the last meeting? Since now that we know that version 10 has a lower trip generation rate.
Thank you. So this application was required to use version 9, which is what the analysis was completed on. Any new applications that come into the town would be required to use version 10.
Okay, so I see. Okay, so it doesn't matter that we're actually reviewing it under version, and version 10 has come out. We're still reviewing it based on version 9.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Councilmember Jensen.
I just wanted to follow up on that. This project was reviewed under 9, which assumes more traffic generated by office than number 10 does. So number 9 that we're reviewing it under actually overstates under the new edition the traffic generation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the follow-on question one might ask is, why did they, why did they reduce the traffic for an office when they went from 9 to 10? I assume they took a lot of data and somehow they decided that somewhere you may have told us it was 25% lower for office during a peak hour, I guess is basically what we're talking about.
Yes, it is lower. It is based on information that they gather. And I'm going to actually ask Colin Burgess from TJKM, our traffic consultant, to provide additional information on this.
Hi there. So the trip generation rate for offices during the peak hours, it has been dropping. And there's different factors that come into play. People are working a little bit different hours. The old 8 to 5 work schedule is less and less common, especially among a lot of tech workers. Traffic congestion itself tends to have an effect in that people will avoid the peak hours, so that's called peak spreading. It's also more and more common for people to work at home, maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week, so that has an effect as well.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? So maybe I'll start us off, and I'll just talk a little bit about my report. It's not really a report. I try to just do observations rather than draw conclusions, and I will draw some conclusions now, but I didn't want to share conclusions to the other council members at the time. So taking a little bit of time to go through it. Basically, I heard a lot of people saying, well, traffic is worse than the reports are saying, and there was even discussion of denying because the traffic report was wrong. So I decided to go out and try to understand the conditions myself, and I went out for three different days, and I noted the times in the data tables here, mostly starting about 8 o'clock, sometimes starting about 8:15, and I would sit for an hour with a piece of paper, and I would do hash marks and count the traffic going in and out of Alberta Way and Route 9. So basically I'd be in Alberta Way watching the intersection just to understand what's the traffic flow in the morning. So it was always in the morning that I focused on. The other piece of the report I did was when I started realizing, well, there's more cars coming in than going out. Where are they all going? I would have thought, okay, it's a neighborhood. There's more cars, people leaving the neighborhood. Well, of course, there's an office building at the end. So after the first day, I started going down to the office building, and I would count how many cars were in their parking lot before I started my hour. And then I would go back and count after I finished my hour. So I had an idea of how many cars came in during that hour that I was counting in the parking lot. So I will share my conclusions a little bit with you, since most people probably can't see this report. Is this on our? It is on our website, but added late, right? Because I probably added Monday, I think.
Attachment 26. So it was added yet with yesterday's addendum.
Okay, so I'll try to not drag this out too much, but a little bit what I found was when I was doing this AM traffic count, I found that there was between 0.5 and 0.8 cars per minute coming in. So I was trying to figure out in 1 minute time, how busy is it? And going out, it typically was 1 car every 2 minutes or 0.5 per minute, up to 0.8 depending on which day and what time. And it actually got a little bit more certain a little bit later. I also did the same thing for cars coming in, which was a little bit higher. I saw there was more like 1.5 cars coming in 1 minute's time, and it was a little bit lower at the times closer to 8, and as I got to 9, things actually got higher. And that's kind of why I started saying, well, what's going on? Where are all these going? So then that kind of gave me, how often are cars going in and out. Then I went down to the parking lots and I said at 8 o'clock, what I did is figured out when the lot was full, how many was there. And there's usually about 120 cars. And I think some of the residents showed me a picture where there was 117 or 114. I don't remember what they said. So something in that range seemed like a full office building down there. And I also noted the office building had a space available, so I called the commercial broker to ask how much space was available, and it turns out it's only 1,800 square feet, so less than 2,000 of the 56,000 square feet. And what I noted, interestingly, was at 8 o'clock, that only 20% of the cars were there yet. And at 8:45, still only 50% of the cars were there. And, I'm thinking in terms of when do all of the school traffic, that's when traffic's really bad. Are these people coming in during the school traffic? And if 50%, school traffic starts finishing a little after 8. So at 8:45, only 50% of the cars into the office building were there. At 9:40, we were still only at 75% of the cars. So you're still getting 25% of the cars coming in closer to 10 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, there was 90%, and then a few would quickly come in right after 10. So that helped me understand. And I drew the conclusion it also kind of matches what ITE was finding when they went from 9 to 10. People aren't coming to work at 8 o'clock like we used to. They're able to spread their schedule out to avoid the traffic, and so in my mind, I validated why ITE from 9 to 10 said during the peak hour, which they defined as 7:30 to 8:30, which is our bad time when there's a lot of school traffic. There is decreasing number of cars to a office project. So that's conclusion that, again, part of what I want to do is understand, is the report, is the whole philosophy working? And I'm getting, yes, it is kind of working. And then I started, I started saying, well, okay, is this manageable? I know nobody wants more traffic, but the question was it manageable? And I thought about, certainly for the morning, the cars are going to come into the project we're talking about on the near the entrance to Alberta Way, and come in and have to turn left into the driveway. Well, they're going to get backed up if there's a lot of cars going out. Well, most of the time, there was one car every 2 minutes, or something more than a minute. So for more than a minute, cars can turn left. And I said, well, the report we saw, the scaled down 7,400, showed 151 cars. I know this is hard to follow without seeing all the numbers, but 151 cars were supposed to come into our 74,000 square foot project in the AM peak using version 9, which we know is higher than version 10. That turns into 2.5 cars per minute. So we need to be able to turn 2.5 cars left into the project in a minute's time before the next car going out kind of blocks it. It seems to me that with the current 1.5 plus a 2.5, you're at about 4 cars need to be able to turn left between cars that go out, and you've got more than a minute to do that. So my conclusion is the traffic is manageable. Nobody wants more, but it is manageable. And the report seems to be accurate from what I observed. So I know that was a long discussion and maybe hard to follow. And I know it's unusual to ask questions of other council members, but I'm sure to elaborate. I'm willing to elaborate if anybody's confused. I would add, actually, so after I did all that, some observations that did concern me was the left turn lane coming from Route 9 onto Alberta Way would usually have 3 or 4 cars every time a green light would occur. So you would get a burst of 3 cars, and then you'd get no cars for quite a while. One of the times that I came down to turn left into Alberta Way, I was the last car before I would have blocked the through traffic on Route 9. So lengthening that left turn lane, I think, is important to do, and I understand in the plan we're going to be adding 100 feet to that, so I definitely want to see that, but it is part of the plan. The other part is obviously going out. I did see a little bit of queuing in the morning where somebody would, if 2 cars were trying to turn left, then the person couldn't turn right. So I can imagine in the evening that being an issue, and a dedicated right lane definitely needs to be there to make sure in the evening the cars can go out. And if you look at the traffic report, two-thirds of the cars turn right from the existing data that was taken. So a lot of the cars are turning right. If we can get a dedicated right turn lane, that will help stacking in the evening. And I understand that is supposed to be part of the project. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So that's the end of my traffic comments. I know I beat that horse quite a bit. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going down a different path at this point.
Yes, please.
This appeal comes to us under our ordinance, which is ordinance number 2920-295 and 2920-300. And what the applicant was saying is that there was an error, basically, at the Planning Commission level. And that, however, the applicant did not say that there was new information. And the reason that that is important, because if there were new information, then there is the opportunity for the council to send this back to the Planning Commission. But if it were simply that the Planning Commission erred, then it would not go back. It could not go back to the Planning Commission under our ordinance. Now, before I go on to the next thing I wanted to say, I want to point out that having listened to the Planning Commission hearing on this before it came up to us, and having read their transcript, I generally am impressed by the Planning Commission, but this I thought was an extraordinary hearing. I thought they did a great job, and that the 7-0 recommendation for denial that came to us was very, very well founded in the facts and the law. Now, during the course of the hearing last time and in the past, both the people in our neighborhood, in our town, and the applicant talked about many, many issues. There are very few, if any, of you who said, well, I just want to talk to you about 29-2295 and 29-2300. And I get that. However, I do only talk about those ordinances in the sense that that is the guide, that is the law that this council is supposed to follow. There was one person who testified at our last meeting that said, well, this is easy. You have the ordinance, and there was no error or abuse of discretion on part of the Planning Commission, and so you just deny the appeal. Well, technically that might be correct. However, what has happened since the last council meeting in the last 2 weeks, there has been some significant new information. In part, the neighbors on Alberta Way have brought forward and amplified information on a design of the office buildings that would be acceptable to them. I get it that not everybody on Alberta Way who lives in the residences there is of like mind. But having said that, there was new information. There was also new information, and this was definitely new, from the applicant, in that they came up with a different design that reduced the square footage of the office building. I might get these numbers wrong. I think that some neighbors were at something like 64,000 square feet, and the applicant was at 70,000 square feet. So that is definitely new information. And under our ordinance, when we have new information, what we normally do, or what we normally do under policy, is send this application back to the Planning Commission to consider the new information. However, that is a policy. We get that wording from our town attorney, but it is not a legal mandate. So we don't have to send something back by law to the Planning Commission when there is new information. So it is within that context that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. I'm going to move that we continue this application to a date certain, that we do that in order to give the staff the opportunity to review the 70,000 square foot application, or the 70,000 square foot concept, and the 70,000 square foot concept and the 64,000 square foot concept, specifically as to the visibility impact on the north side of the project, that when this comes back to us, the public testimony is not reopened. However, the public and the applicant would, of course, have the opportunity to provide information, written information, to the council. And that's it. So that's my motion.
Councilmember Jensen.
I'd be prepared to second the motion, but I have a question for the maker of the motion regarding the part that asks the staff to review the $64,000 question. I can't help it. 64,000 square foot proposal. I have seen a letter from the applicant regarding 70,000 square feet, but I have not seen a quote 64,000 square foot proposal. I've heard a lot of suggestions, but I haven't seen one, and I don't know what you contemplate being evaluated.
And she doesn't have to respond.
She doesn't have to respond.
Mr. Mayor, do you?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. The 70,000 was a letter and then ultimately a rendering from the applicant. The 64,000 square foot number, in my recollection, came up several times from the emails from the neighborhood, some members of the neighborhood. And so I'm going to leave that number in my motion because it's my best recollection of what many or some members of the neighborhood wanted. And it is just to come back to us. And when it comes back to us, and thank you, Ms. Jensen, for letting me talk some more. When it comes back to us, it's not necessarily, when we get that information back, we can consider that information. We will consider that information, but we do not necessarily need to make a decision on those two 70,000 square feet or 64,000 square feet. We still have the opportunity to grant the appeal, deny the appeal, or something in between.
Okay, with that explanation, thank you very much. I'll second the motion.
Okay. I have a question for staff. So do you understand I'm going to ask you rather than the maker of the motion, for your understanding, are we saying that the applicant has to create a 64,000 square foot option? Because they're talking about how they would do a 70, and I'm not understanding, or what are we asking?
My understanding of the motion was that it was going to be staff that would be looking at it. If there is additional clarification as to how the building would be reduced to 64,000, first floor or second floor reduction, or both, any specifics that you'd like staff to look at would be helpful.
Councilmember Spector?
Yes, the 64,000, I understand that the applicant did give us, I think today, can't remember, did give us a rendering of the 70,000 square foot building. I also understand that the neighborhood did not do a drawing of a 64,000 square foot building. And it is for that reason that my motion contemplates the reduction in square footage of the 64,000 to see how it could be backed up from the north part of the property and impact the visibility at that side. So I don't have a drawing for you, but I have a concept for you.
Okay, let me make some comments unless somebody else wants to jump in. So generally, I'm supportive of this motion. The last time I met with neighbors, they told me their top three concerns were the dog park and the draw that might do from outside the neighborhood. So I understand, that is in part of the proposal, so I'm definitely looking to see that. Number two was the view corridor, kind of as seen from Pueblo de los Gatos to the north end of the current building. That view corridor was mostly full of a tree and blocking all of the mountains. So their proposal is to reduce that by 16 feet. It would be nice to try to understand how much that opens it up. They showed us a picture of an orange square in the front of the building where they were going to remove it, but it's really the back of the building that's blocking the view, and we can only imagine, yes, definitely it's going to remove some, but if there was some way to understand how much it really opens up the view, because you're kind of actually seen from the side a little bit. So that was number two. And then the third thing that was on the neighbors list is I realized that all of the geologists or geoengineers are saying that dewatering shouldn't be an issue, but I think it's a real concern for those that live there. From what I understand, okay, sure, if you fix it, if it breaks, that's not really what they want. They don't want the inconvenience of having to move out if it breaks, so they're looking for some kind of monitoring that occurs during it, so you can stop the process if something's before it goes wrong. I know there was a bunch of talk. There was a letter from the applicant's geoengineer, if I'm using the right term, but I never quite digested whether it was adequate or not. So I'm looking for that solution also. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to note that in the report for tonight's meeting, we did provide some additional language for your consideration regarding the monitoring of potential settling that might be associated with the dewatering. So if this motion passes and the item is continued, at that time, if it does look like the council might approve the project, there is some language in your documents for consideration.
Okay, and then one thing that wasn't mentioned as the top three, but I believe are some concerns is, I know Mr. Lamb talked about removing trees so you can see slivers of mountains above the new buildings. I don't think that is a much value view shed. I would prefer us to consider adding some landscaping that helps break up the mass of this building. I don't think it does that great a job of breaking up the mass, so some kind of landscaping out front. It doesn't have to be at the street. It could be anywhere, but I personally would like to see that. I don't know what other council members think about that idea since it hasn't been mentioned too much, but I'll put that on the table. Councilmember Jensen.
Through the mayor, I wanted to go back to my second after Councilwoman Spector gave a further explanation. I seconded the motion with the idea that the explanation was that the 64,000 square foot building was an idea that some, not all neighbors had proposed, and I will not second a motion that requires anyone to make a drawing, a rendering, or an evaluation of a building that's not on the table for us to consider. I would like to continue this, but I don't want to second a motion that would in any way require that.
So back to staff, is that what my understanding was staff was going to provide some analysis, but are we doing a rendering? Are you requiring the applicant to do a rendering?
And I can jump in. Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. Staff would be requesting the applicant to fulfill that request made by the maker of the motion. That's not something staff would prepare.
Okay. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. It is not the intention of this motion to have the applicant do any additional work. It was anticipated that the 64,000 square foot would be 6,000 less than that was already presented to us, and that if we could have a general idea of what additional visibility there is on the north side of the property, that in a very, in a non-technical way, that is all I was looking for. I was not looking for more work from the applicant.
Councilmember Jensen.
With that, I'll keep my second in place.
Okay, thank you. All right. Vice Mayor Leonardis, would you like to say anything? I just want to check in on with you since you're not visible.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. I concur with the comments that have been said already. I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, thank you. So any further comments before I, okay, Councilmember Spector.
I know I was probably jumping on Ms. Sayoc, but part of the motion is continuing this to a date certain.
And we need the date.
Yeah, I would recommend May 1st.
All right, May 1st is okay with the maker of the motion?
How about the seconder, May 1st?
That's fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I need a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Spector.
Yes.
Councilmember Sayoc.
Yes.
Mayor Rennie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Leonardis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. Councilmember Jensen, you want to add more?
A matter of process for the staff. Do we defer any decision on the certification of the EIR until the next hearing? Mr. Schultz, you're nodding at me.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, item 7 is continued, and we are on to item 8. And I suspect some people may want to leave the room, so we'll give them a few seconds. It seems quiet enough to go ahead and start.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Monica Wren, Economic Vitality Manager. Before you this evening is the Policy Committee's recommendation to rescind the alcoholic beverage policy. It was originally adopted in 1994 and amended to its current version in 2001. Since 2014, there's been a series of conversations about updating and amending this policy, yet it has not been done to this date. As the Policy Committee, and it's also been a part of the strategic priorities for several years, in 2017, in late 2017, with the strategic priorities for this coming year, the alcoholic beverage policy was combined with the community vitality issues, and the Policy Committee reviewed this policy once again under the same idea of the seats to parking, that it's a policy that it's outdated, it's included in some of our other policies, and it has county and state regulated bodies that provide regulation over it, so it's redundant. In an effort to streamline the permitting processes, the council policy has discussed these town regulations and are recommending that you rescind the policy this evening. The Policy Committee is here as well as staff to answer any of your questions.
Okay, questions for staff? Comments or motion? Councilmember Jensen.
As a member of the, are there any public testimony?
Oh, sorry. Let me, thank you. I'm forgetting that I thought they all left. There are still some out there. It's a lot quieter now. I have no cards on this item. The rescinding of the alcohol policy, would anybody wish to address us on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public testimony and come back for motions. Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Okay. As a member of the Policy Committee in different iterations over many years, and as a member of the Planning Commission, we have dealt with this alcohol policy for forever. It's now almost 25 years old, believe it or not. And the recommendation tonight comes from really the conclusion in the staff report, and as Ms. Wren said, trying to eliminate redundancies. And so by rescinding this particular policy, the town is keeping in place CUP requirements, it's keeping in place recommendation of the town council requirements, and obviously it's keeping in place state alcohol beverage control license requirements. So this was an opportunity to eliminate what's essentially a redundant policy, and the committee brings it to the council in the hopes that we will get your support for rescinding it. And so my motion is to rescind it.
Okay, I have a motion. Councilmember Sack.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Councilmember Spector.
A statement or some comments and then a question of staff. In the past, this council and prior councils established these policies in order to have a balancing of interest, a balance between our locally owned retail stores and our formula stores, our restaurants, our bars, our salons. And so it was, the objective of these policies was to do a balancing amongst those uses and a balancing amongst the commercial part of our town and our neighborhoods, our adjoining neighborhoods. And in my experience, we have 15, it's not my experience that we have 15 cities, we have 15 cities in Santa Clara County. And the balancing that we have done with our policies have made, in my opinion, Los Gatos the most successful over the long term, with maybe one exception that is contending with us, but it has made us a very successful town. And by contrast, for example, we have a neighboring city that was very, very successful with its restaurants, and that those, by focusing on just restaurants, it became ultimately a not vibrant town, city, and it's still having problems. Another adjacent city is doing very well with restaurants and bars, but that vitality in the evening is eating up and diminishing their vitality during the day. Now, the staff report, the staff tells us, and the policy committee tells us that we still have the ABC, the alcohol beverage control, and we have the CUPs. But what we know from experience is that the ABC, all it is concerned about is what it's empowered under the state law. In Los Gatos, the ABC has only taken away, in my experience, one alcohol license, and that was when a bar restaurant had, over a long period of time, insects in their liquor, and so finally when they didn't get rid of the insects in their liquor, they got rid of their alcohol beverage control license. Then you have the CU. So I don't think the ABC is going to be concerned when a neighbor complains about noise. Then we have the CUPs, conditional use permits. The challenge with those is that what they do is they run with the land, and so if an owner or a business changes, the CUP stays with the land. And if you want to change the CUP because it is a vested land right, using my terminology, it is very hard to change that policy. So with all that blah, 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 gets to my question of staff, which is under the proposed, it's not even a policy, under the ordinance or the direction that you are suggesting we take this evening, if a neighborhood has problems with noise or interference with the neighborhood in general, with people walking by, with people going to the bathroom or vomiting on their land, what would the town do? What would that neighbor do?
The town would do exactly what it's doing now, and that has nothing to do with this policy. The town uses its town codes with regards to noise. It looks at its conditional use permit that's already in effect. But this policy really doesn't have anything to do with noise from neighborhoods. In fact, if you look at the enforcement section, it just refers you to our town code section regarding enforcement of the CUPs and the ability to modify or rescind it. I think the policy, if you really go through it line by line, and that's what I think the policy committee was trying to do, is to try to find out which is still viable that you want to keep in here that's not within our code sections or not within the CUP process. And about the only thing we could find in there really that would be the change for anything that probably comes forward is the whole idea of you have to have a meal while you are drinking alcohol. And currently we're not enforcing that because we just don't have the ability to enforce that, nor do we receive complaints if that occurs. So really, if you look at it page by page and look at why it was put into effect and what we're doing at the end game will still be there through your CUP process. Now, you could say we use this document during the CUP process to know what conditions to put in there. For example, the security requirements and the hours of operations and all of the, if there's other ones that maybe won't be there that behind the document. Now we have to rely on staff and the planning commission, the council, to make sure all those conditions are in your CUP process. But as far as enforcement, it really won't be any different than what we've been doing right now.
Can I follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. And I actually did the same thing. I went through the policy line by line, word by word, to see what the difference would be. And at the end of the staff report, there was a suggestion or request if there's anything else you see that you think should be raised. And yes, what's missing in this recommendation is how is a complaint reviewed? Because right now, you're saying, and I agree, the only thing you can do is modify or revoke the CUP. Those of us who have tried to do that know just how hard it is. I believe that we could have a policy or we could have a procedure that allows for modification that is not as difficult as a CUP, which is a vested property right. So that would be a question that I throw out there, because I just think it's really, really hard to deal with these balancing issues when you're dealing through a CUP.
But the current policy doesn't allow you to do anything more than that right now. What you're suggesting is further ability to enforce based on a public nuisance requirements, which is on my list to do and should be coming to you, I'm hoping, in June. So that would allow for enforcement of public and private nuisance much more readily available. But currently, we don't have that ability even within this policy to do anything more than what's allowed under the code. And that's under the enforcement section on the last page of the policy.
One more?
Oh, okay, go ahead.
It seems to me that in the not too distant past, we did, and I believe it was through the town attorney's office, we did something, or you suggested something that was an agreement. Maybe it had to do with entertainment, and it was an agreement as opposed to a condition of the CUP, and that was easier to enforce or modify than a conditional use permit. Do I remember correctly, and if so, is that something that could be used?
That's an operational agreement, and we've done that on certain businesses, and we could certainly continue to do that on ones where we believe there'll be issues with. And I think the last one that we were concerned was the toll house. We did an operation agreement with that because you were able to do one in that case. So that was the one. But that's still, again, there's nothing in the current alcohol policy that even talks about operational agreements.
Councilmember Jensen.
I was just going to say that operational agreements remains a tool for our use.
Okay, Councilmember Jensen.
I was just going to point out, both as a member of the Policy Committee and in listening to Councilwoman Spector, this council put into place all kinds of changes and modifications to our noise ordinance to address problems that are stemming from particular businesses. We set up and funded a complaint officer to respond to neighbors' complaint about noise. Those tools are all available, and the Policy Committee felt that with those in place, and certainly with a diligent council and Planning Commission who are aware of the issues, and the issues can be brought to those two bodies whenever there is a new application, they can certainly come in and adjust conditions as are appropriate. But the alcohol policy itself does not inform or assist with that process. So the Policy Committee felt that it was time for it to be rescinded.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Question of staff. With regard to, it says in the staff report that the CUP is still coming to, the application is still coming to the council. Would that be the time to have a condition of an operational agreement if that seemed appropriate?
Yes, that would be the time to do that.
Right, thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll weigh in a little bit. I was the other member of the Policy Committee, and when I first read it, and actually staff was recommending resending it to when it was sent to the Policy Committee, and I was a little resistant at first, but we discussed most of it line by line, And it really is, a lot of it is full of things like if you serve alcohol outdoors, you have to have a barrier around the area. Well, that's already required by ABC. So a lot of it was redundant. I think there was a few things that didn't even make any sense anymore. We mentioned a little bit earlier one thing we were going to lose, or Mr. Schultz did. I think there's two things that we lose by getting rid of it. First of all, ABC says food has to be available. We say you actually have to order it with the alcohol. That's the only difference there. If we get rid of it, it has to be available, but we don't force people to order it, which we're not really able to do anyway, so that's kind of silly. The second thing was, in it actually says no new CUPs for alcohol served after 11 o'clock during the weekdays or after 1 o'clock on the weekends. So that's the only other piece in there that I felt was at all useful. And then I started thinking, so I said, okay, well, at one point in the 90s when this was written, if you recall, I lived in Los Gatos in 92, and I remember waiting in line Thursday nights at CB Hannigan's for 45 minutes to get in. So I can tell you it was a much different town back then, and I think it made sense to write something that says, enough is enough, we've got enough bars. It was, and I think, it was more about drinking and rowdy behavior back then, and it's maybe times have changed, and actually I think they have somewhat. I think the new businesses that are coming in are kind of more sophisticated. They aren't just serve alcohol. There are things like wine tasting where you have a drink or two and enjoy friends' company kind of thing. Those are more the kinds of businesses that are coming into town. And I think Los Gatos' brand has changed. Either the times have changed or our brand has changed or both. Because our brand really isn't come to Los Gatos and get drunk and fall down in the streets kind of thing. I want to say sort of a more sophisticated kind of brand where it really is come and enjoy your friends or come and enjoy some entertainment and have a couple drinks. Not the focus is that versus come and have as much as you can and have your friends carry you home. So I really didn't, when I thought through, really felt like we needed that, and I am willing to rescind the policy. Other comments? So I do have a motion and a second through all that. So would Mr. Leonardis wish to comment, or you don't have to?
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. When I was the mayor, and I both approached the alcohol policy then, and we put forth a number of, potential recommendations. But I will tell you, ever since I've been on council, we've been discussing this alcohol policy, and I have a tendency to agree that I think, as you stated, it's a little bit outmoded. So I think we have plenty of protections in place, and I would be willing to see it be rescinded at this time with a recommendation from the policy committee.
Okay, thank you. So let me call for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Spector.
Yes.
Councilmember Syak.
Yes.
Mayor Rennie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Leonardis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. And so that's not an ordinance, so we don't need a reading, and we're getting rid of it anyway. So that ends item number 8, and we're on to item number 9.
Let me press the button. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Tonight I'm presenting to you the fiscal year 2018-19 Community Grant Allocation Recommendations of the Community and Senior Services Commission for Human Services Grants and the Arts and Cultural Commission for Arts and Education Funding. This year, a total of 14 applications were received in both categories by the deadline, and the total requesting amount of all applications came to $196,600. After reviewing all applications, the Community and Senior Services Commission is recommending the allocation of a total of $93,000 for human services-related grants, which will include $10,000 for the counseling and support services for youth for school-based mental health services at the high school, $9,000 for Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation to assist in their 55-plus programming for senior services, $9,000 to Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation for their Clubhouse Scholarship Fund for youth enrichment for after-school programs, $4,000 for Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation for their Summer Enrichment School Scholarship for youth, $9,000 to Live Oak Adult Day Services to assist with adult daycare, $29,000 to Live Oak Senior Nutrition and Service Center to assist with their nutrition and social programs for seniors, $3,000 to Next Door Solutions for Domestic Violence to assist with shelter and support services for victims of domestic violence, and $20,000 to West Valley Community Services for their community access to resources and education program, which provides case management and support to at-risk families. That's a total of $93,000 for human services grants that is being recommended by the Commission. After reviewing all arts and education applications, the Arts and Cultural Commission is recommending the allocation of a total of $20,000, which includes $4,000 to the art docents of Los Gatos to provide educational arts programming at Los Gatos Union School District, $5,000 to the Los Gatos Community Concert Association to provide live music concerts for seniors, $6,500 to the Los Gatos Museum Association for their Museum Explorer program for youth, $3,000 to the Los Gatos Museum Association for a video histories program in collaboration with KCAT, and $1,500 to the Veterans Memorial and Support Foundation of Los Gatos to help support a Veterans Day celebration for a total of $20,000. If the recommendation of the Commissions is accepted by Council, the total allocation to the community grants for fiscal year 2018-19 would be $113,000. Council is being asked to consider the recommendation of the Commission and approve the community grants for fiscal year 18-19.
Okay, any questions from Council for staff? Seeing none, let me open the public testimony. First up, I have Mary Goulart.
Good evening, everybody. The room sure did clear out, didn't it? Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here again this year, and we really appreciate the consideration for Live Oak Senior Nutrition and Service Center. We have been providing for 45 years this very invaluable program to our community. It's not only a center where seniors can come and get nutrition and a safety net where they know that if they don't show up that people are there and concerned about them, but it fulfills a very important role of preventing social malnutrition, which is something that causes devastation in our senior community. Our goal at Live Oak, again, is not only to feed our seniors in body and in mind, but to build inclusion within the community. We're really focusing this coming year on intergenerational programs, reaching out to the youth. We have some great programs coming up with the youth and the Youth Commission. We also have a number of nurses that are coming in from San Jose State that are going to do health talks and blood pressure checks. We are looking forward to partnering with the community, working with the Adult Rec Center, promoting all of the programs that are in this wonderful town of ours. We are very, very grateful for the support of the town ongoing, and we look forward to networking with everybody and building partnerships and really finding inclusion for our older adults in our community. So we thank you very much. We are very grateful on behalf of all of our seniors, our volunteers, our board members, and our staff. We thank you very much for the support.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Goulart? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see, what order did I have this? So next up, Sujanth Venkat Raman. Maybe you'll have to correct me.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council Member. My name is Sujata Venkatraman. I'm the Associate Executive Director at West Valley Community Services. I'm here to thank the staff for their work, the Commission for their recommendation, and for this wonderful partnership that we've had with the town of Los Gatos. The Community Access to Resources and Education program connects high-risk families and seniors to services. Our mobile food pantry is making that happen. So we are seeing more of residents accessing services now that the mobile food pantry is here on a weekly basis at the Los Gatos Methodist Church. We are having a new partnership with the Mid-Peninsula Housing by Open Doors, and they are wanting us to serve their clients. We just did a resource fair with St. Luke's and Methodist Church, and we had so many clients get connected to services like benefits, food stamps, and this partnership has been very valuable to the town residents, and people who have never wanted services or thought they don't qualify are reaching out to us because we are here in Los Gatos and they are able to talk to our case manager and get the services they need. So we really thank you for this continued partnership, and we hope that you will follow through with the recommendation of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, I have Alice Hoagland.
Good evening. I'm Alice Hoagland. I'm the mother of Mark Bingham, class of 1988 at Los Gatos High School, rugby player and passenger, along with Todd Beamer, Los Gatos High School class of 87, who lost their lives fighting Islamist terrorists on September 11th, 2001. I've been asked to become a member of the Veterans Memorial and Support Foundation of Los Gatos, and I'm heartily excited about joining with their cause. Ellen Manzo of that foundation asked me to speak to you today. As you know, the foundation has been laboring for 5 years and last December received approval to honor all U.S. veterans and especially those of Los Gatos by placing a graceful memorial in the midst of our town center. Los Gatos Veterans Memorial seeks to honor and respect and express gratitude to all our military men and women. It will provide a place for reflection and remembrance to all men and women, living and dead, who served at the United States military or fought as civilians against Islamist terror on 9/11, and for those of us to appreciate and seek to honor their sacrifice. We urgently hope that this memorial will afford us an opportunity, in Ellen Manzo's words, to be a catalyst toward healing of the wounds that remain long after the fighting ceases. We invite you to visit our website at honoravet.org if you haven't done so. The town of Los Gatos is a contributor to this memorial, and we are very grateful to you all for the work and support that you have showed to us in the past. This town will be honored on the wall of gratitude at the new memorial. The town of Los Gatos has 25 veterans at the Meadows who will benefit from a memorial in the town and a larger group living throughout our town. We hope you'll look online for the December 2017 Los Gatos Living magazine and the attachment with its fine article and a photo of a few of 25 of our Los Gatos veterans. Our application for $35,000 of your CSSC, if granted, I'm already 29 seconds. If granted, will go toward the construction of the memorial, not for voting and any other purpose. We have labored for 5 years to get this done, and we certainly appreciate your focus because we consider this to be our year. Unlike many nonprofits, this foundation is composed entirely of volunteers, and none of our money goes out for anything except the focus toward our mission. We certainly hope that your decision makers here will see fit to grant us the funds we need to convert. I'm sorry, I only had 2 minutes to speak in December. So anyway,
thank you. Let's see if we have questions.
Thank you very much. Anyone
any
have any
questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, and we'll see if I can say your last name. Stephen Guruwaya.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Steve Guruwaya. I serve on the Veterans Foundation of Los Gatos, and I also am the publisher of Los Gatos Living Magazine, which affords me the distinct opportunity to meet with a lot of residents here in Los Gatos and to have discussion about what's important here. What we're looking for is a reconsideration and reevaluation of the distribution of this grant. What we went through the original process, and I think there may have been some misunderstanding as to where we're going to spend our dollars, which, to clarify, is not going towards marketing efforts as much as it is to start the process of or use it as seed money. Much of it is going to go towards back to the town for fees and other expenses related to going forward with this, the memorial itself. So we're looking for a start of project cost coverage for that. And also, I think the key here is that we're looking for support for our senior veterans. We have a number of veterans who live in as Alice mentioned, at the Meadows, and we have an article about that in our December issue, but also at the terraces. But beyond that, we have residents who are living alone, who are desperately looking for support, and that's something that our foundation will support them with. The memorial itself is a place where people can come together and congregate and heal and have discussion about their experiences. And these residents who are not living in the Meadows are alone. We're looking to relieve isolation and to give them an opportunity to share their stories that they've carried around for decades, and to be able to give them some level of relief and healing and consideration. So what we're looking for today is really, we have not done this before. We have not asked for money in the past in terms of grants. And all the other organizations here that are asking for dollars here are wonderful organizations, and I think that ours is really about bringing some visibility to the veterans, our senior veterans, who are living in isolation.
Okay, questions? Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Guruwaya. I am confused at this point about what the Veterans Organization is asking for. We have a recommendation for $1,500 to the Veterans Memorial and Support Foundation of Los Gatos for the Veterans Day celebration. I've heard from Ms. Hoagland $35,000 to the memorial itself. I've heard from you seed money to build the memorial, and I've heard from you outreach to seniors, none of which are Veterans Day celebrations. So what precisely are you asking for, and do you want the $1,500?
We do.
Or not?
We do, indeed.
For the celebration.
So that's specific to the celebration itself.
Okay, thank you.
We're launching the celebration for Veterans Day, or the aim is to launch it for Veterans Day, and the $1,500 is going towards the visibility and the launch of the event itself. What we're looking for is the separate grant of $34,000. That's to really get us going with the memorial itself.
Okay, thank you. You're asking for an additional $34,000 unrelated to the $1,500 that's been
that's right.
indicated.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
Right.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me follow up on that. It's still not clear to me, so tell me one more time. The $34,000, $35,000, you're asking for that money to spend it on what?
On the costs associated with building the memorial. So we are going to a capital campaign where all volunteers here, other than the company or the organization that we've hired to help, Netzel Grigsby, we've contracted to help us move our fundraising efforts and organization forward. They're the only organization that we're paying for. We're all volunteers here on the board and in the foundation itself. So the money that we're asking for is really going towards the moving forward with the memorial and the fees associated with it as we're going towards our fundraising efforts.
So I'll follow up. So in the staff report, it said your request from the Veterans Memorial Foundation was $8,000. How did we get to 34, and what was the 8 about?
The $8,000 was for a different grant that we've been awarded, or at least considered for the $1,500 recommendation. The other is the $93,000 that was available that has already been divided up, but we're looking for reconsideration of that $93,000 to include the Veterans Foundation.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, Mr. Baker can clarify the two applications that we received.
Okay.
Yes. There were 2 applications received by the Veterans Memorial and Support Foundation of Los Gatos. The first was submitted under the Human Resources Community Grant portion to the Community and Senior Services Commission. So this was under the Human Services grants. And the Veterans Memorial Foundation asked for $34,000 and the recommendation of the commission was not to fund that amount. It was not that they didn't like the idea, but rather that it didn't fall under the purview of human services grants for what they felt in the grant wording was a capital campaign. There was the second application, which was for $8,000, which was under the arts and education grants, which was looked at by the Arts and Culture Commission, and that was for the Veterans Day celebration, and the recommendation coming from the Arts Commission was $1,500 for that one. So sorry for the clarification. There were 2 there. I didn't state the first one because there was no recommendation from the Community Services Commission to fund that one.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
So just to beat a dead horse, you're asking for $35,000, and you would like us to essentially eliminate grants that are recommended for other community organizations and give them to the Veterans Memorial.
What we're looking for is reconsideration of the allocation.
All right, thank you.
We have 0 today, and we have not been awarded any of this over the past years, so we're coming here for the first time really looking for a grant so that it can offset some of the costs that we're working with right now.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, John Lochner.
John Lochner, 150 Craffield Heights, Los Gatos, California. We're asking for this funds to help our organization really get moving. We've been in the process of planning a Veterans Memorial since 2012. 5 years we've been in this process. We've reached the point now where we see daylight. We see a Veterans Memorial happening, and you're all invited on November the 10th of this year for the formal dedication of our Veterans Memorial. I just want to point out to you that our board of directors are all volunteers, and all of the 100% of our board have made financial contributions to this to make it work. Well, our application with the town and our costs to the town so far are in the range of $73,000 that we have paid the town for fees, for permits, etc. In addition to the additional costs that we have with our artists and the structural engineers, the landscape people, the the architect making the drawings for us. So we see light, but we need additional help. We're in the process now of major fundraising, and $1.5 million is an awful lot of money to ask for. We're doing very, very well, and we're happy at this point with the commitments that we have from people in the community, and we have a lot more people to talk to yet. So there's going to be a lot more additional fundraising taking place before this project is completed. Devcon Construction have stepped up to be our general contractor, and they are doing a wonderful, wonderful job in supporting us. Gary Filizetti, the president, is a veteran, a Vietnam veteran, and so they came forward and they're helping us with this, and we can promise you it's going to be a world-class memorial in honor of all of our veterans and our first responders as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lochner? Seeing none, thank you. Next up, Kent Hillhouse.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you. I was like John up here. He shows me what former mayors can do. Impressive. Two things. Number one, the volunteer board members. We've contributed over $100,000 to the kitty to pay the town off for the expenses we've gone through so far. So we all have some water in the bucket, if you will, and we intend to follow through on this thing and make it happen. Gary Filizetti, who is a resident of Los Gatos, his company built the 49er Stadium in 1 year. He says he can do this in 2 months, which is why we're planning on 10 November. And the project manager is the guy who built the stadium. So we're looking forward to the subcontractors coming on board with a lot of in-kind type of work also. So we're moving ahead in that regard. But back to the senior veterans, the terraces. I've talked to a former A6 pilot over there who's now 78 years old. He was telling me that there's a lot of folks over there that as they get older and their spouses die and so forth, they're experiencing loneliness, and they look for a place why they're excited about this memorial. It's a place that they can go to and be with other friends, light up a cigar maybe. Didn't say that too loud, but just sit back and relax and enjoy the memorial in the Redwood Grove. So this push that John's talking about is important to us, and if there's a way that the town council can reconsider and either add to the pot or maybe split the pot up a little differently, we would appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And also, I didn't bring a bunch of guys along this time because I know it's kind of irritating for people. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. John Shepherdson up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just showed up to kind of watch, but given this topic, first is the notion of all of the allocation. I think from what I'm hearing, they all make sense to me. So if it's possible to sort of add to the pot for the Veterans Memorial, and there was a mention of like water in the bucket. Well, Miss Hoagland's lost her son, and that cannot be any greater loss. And so if the town of Los Gatos can contribute financially to sort of jumpstart this process, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I remember talking to my friend Mr. Lochner, I think it was in Pharmaca maybe 3 years ago, about how much time that he's put into this project, and he's not alone. So it seems to me it comes down to priorities, and so I think that's worthy of serious consideration, perhaps reconsideration. The other point was another funding was, I think, $10,000 for mental health or at the high school. Well, certainly we know from national news the shootings and whatnot. So that seems very worthwhile. And the Live Oak seems very worthwhile. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any further speakers who wish to address us? Go ahead and let us know your name.
My name is Colleen Hudgen, and I'm the Executive Director of Live Oak Adult Day Services. And I'm sorry for just getting my card in. But I just want to reiterate what everyone has said. We are so thankful, grateful to staff, to you, Mayor, and council members for the recommendation that we get $9,000. Every little bit helps. We have been providing services, just like Mary said, of the nutrition program over at the Los Gatos United Methodist Church for almost 45 years. We started as a church outreach program where the church members were volunteering, but the need for the service grew and grew to the point where we had to, spread our own wings and become a separate nonprofit. Ever since then, the need has increased and increased. The average age of the client that attends the Live Oak program is 85. And so we had 3 people that celebrated their 100th birthday this year. So when I'm hearing about the veteran story and about how, Los Gatos really cares about its seniors, and I've heard this over and over again, and I know it's true because I've known, and I've been here presenting many years. I just want to share the difference between Live Oak Adult Daycare and the nutrition program. So my seniors have aged to the place, and their disabilities are such that their family members have made the very humane and loving decision to take care of their loved ones in the home. They have dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, PTSD. So we would take veterans, if they want to come in and tell their stories of the war, they can come in. We remove them from that isolation and that feeling of being a burden to their family. So when they come to our center, from the minute they get there until they leave, they're inundated with activities, with interactions. We do the intergenerational activities with the preschool kids, middle school kids, high school kids, college kids. So there's always someone to talk to. We have one guy in the program who is a retired fireman. He comes in with his coat and his hat, and he tells the story of the big fire up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. His wife was ready to kill him because she was sick of the story. But every day when he's at Live Oak, everybody just sits up and listens, and they are enjoying the story because for them, it's a great story, and it doesn't matter how many times he tell it. So my thanks, my gratitude, my humbleness is real. I do this because it's a passion of mine. I've been doing it for 40 years, and it's all of us who work in this field, we do it because of the love of the people that we're caring for and the difference that we're making every day, the smiles on the faces of our seniors. So I just want to say that if you haven't come by, please come by and visit and see what we do at Live Oak. It's a very good investment, and actually I want to close by saying that many of the other programs in the room we do coordinate with. So it's not duplication. It's really, you're getting a great bang for your buck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, no, I see no questions. Thank you. Thank you. You were very clear, I guess. I have no more cards. Would anybody else wish to address us? Okay, please come forward and fill out a card afterwards and let us know your name to start.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Scott. Sorry, I'm not dressed more appropriately. I just want to say I was here for 22 years. I owned a property at 30 Tate Avenue.
Get a little closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
Okay. I owned a property at 30 Tate Avenue, which is part of Lot 11, which is surrounded by St. Mary's, which is now going to be, I think, a part of the downtown parking garage. It's the Bessie Wright House. It was built in 1893. The museum thinks, but we think it may be even older. I lost that house through a series of false things that occurred. There was never an intent to sell the house that was listed. And I have some evidence that shows that occurred for the benefit of the downtown parking garage. I was literally thrown out with the clothes on my back. I have a landline where the bug tile came in, and I just had a studio take the static off of it. That was dated 9/12/16. It says the whole thing's a lie. It's coming down. It's the trees. The foreclosure, which was an interested party, with an additional buyer in town who buys property. I actually let it go down because I could create a money trail, and that's something I could follow for sure. And also Wilsey-Ham, when they created their drawings online, their construction specs identify that on March 2nd of 17, that the fence on the, if you're facing the house, the wooden fence on the St. Mary's side will be coming down, and the other fence would be staying. Well, that was my house at that time, and there was no plan for that. So there's an assumption that they knew that this sale would be going down for their benefit. So I have a problem with it. And I've got 34 months of investigation and 11 bins of data. And I have a lot of people that don't want anybody to know about this. And I don't feel safe, honestly, based on what's been happening. So this was not really a home sale. This was never going to be a home sale. I did a remodel to nowhere. I carried it for 2 years to nowhere. And it was always going to be a sale to the town. At one point, they had planned to pull the trees down on the house. My son and I would have perished in that.
Okay, so this is a little off topic. This is more verbal communications, but
I'm pro the garage, by the way, and pro development. But
so you're saying there's a house there now that's coming down somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay,
I planned to take it down for the insurance payment originally, and I squashed that. And I did come into planning and into building and talk to them about the other condition of the home. The condition of the home when I returned to it to live in April of 17 was it had been pre-developed. My floors had been cut. The foundation underpinnings had been cut. The attic tie-ins were not tied in any longer. I think the PD took a picture of what was underneath the area rug. It was covered in sawdust. So a staged home. And the trees were a disaster. They had been deceased on purpose.
Okay. Councilmember Jensen has a question.
I don't really have a question. Through the mayor, I wonder if this speaker can be referred to the manager or the town attorney, because her topic is not regarding grants.
Yeah.
And she has information that should be provided probably offline before the council can consider it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fine
So
with that.
member of the staff could.
Yes, in fact, we have a copy of my card, and the clerk will provide that to you, and we can talk at your convenience.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so I did get another card, and it is Nancy Rochlet.
I was writing a little too quickly. Nancy Roulette.
Roulette, okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council and staff members. I'm the Executive Director of Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation, and I want to express on behalf of the agency our support for the recommendations to fund the Clubhouse Grant, the Summer Enrichment School Grant, and also the Senior Services Grant to the agency. This would represent the second year of grant awards if the recommendations are supported. And it just means that it allows us to extend our reach in all three of those programs. And I just want to express our gratitude for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any. All right, thank you. I'm out of cards again. Anybody else wish to address us on an item on the agenda? Seeing none, I will close public testimony and come back to council for more questions, discussion, motions. Councilmember Jensen.
I'd like to try a motion, and that would be to accept and award the grant recommendations that are contained in attachment 2 and 3 from the Arts and Culture Commission and from the Community and Senior Services Commission as recommended to us.
Okay, I have a motion. Anybody wish to second? It sounds like that motion fails. May come back, but for now it fails. I do have a question on the community services grants. Last year we gave out $100,000. This year's recommendation was $93,000. Where did the 93 come from? Is that a budget number from somewhere?
If you recall, last year the council increased the grant award to $100,000 and made it very clear that it was a one-time addition of $10,000 extra dollars. So our base recommendation typically starts at $90,000. So with the commission's recommendation of $93,000, we're still in the range of what is typical for our grant awards.
Can you remind us where we put that $10,000?
I can do that. Let me pull that up for you.
Thank you.
So last year's awards for the $100,000 in the Human Services grants under the Community and Senior Services Commission, there was $10,000 for the Counseling and Support Services for Youth. There was $10,000 for LGS Rec for their 55-plus programs. There was $11,000 for LGS Rec for their Clubhouse Scholarship Fund. There was $29,000 to Live Oak Senior Nutrition and Service Center, $13,000 to Live Oak Adult Day Services, $6,000 to Nextdoor Solutions to Domestic Violence, and $20,000 to West Valley Community Services, an additional $1,000 to Parents Helping Parents, which was a program that did not apply this year.
I think my question was actually a more difficult one, is if you compare to the year before last, where did we add the 10,000 was what I was really trying to understand. Trying to remember why we added 10 and,
my apologies there.
And what we added it to.
So going back a couple of years, the base grant to West Valley Community Services had been $10,000. Then in 16-17, the council doubled that to $20,000. And West Valley presented last year a very compelling case, so the commission recommended continuing funding at the $20,000. But it was with the council's motion to have the total pot for community and senior services to essentially be $100,000 for 17-18, and that would be a one-time allotment, and then for 18-19 we would go back to the 90.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on that? Councilmember Sack.
Thank you. I just want to ask a clarifying question of Mr. Baker. When you were presenting Attachment 3, the recommendations that Community and Senior Services made, you made a comment that with these funds, they're not intended to be for capital campaigns. If you could just elaborate a little bit more on that.
So the when the Community and Senior Services was looking through the grants for human services grants, the reason that they did not recommend funding to the Veterans Memorial Foundation of the $34,000 that they had applied to, or a portion of that, was that they felt that that did not fall under the purview of a human services grant. That the way that the application had been written, the application indicated that money would be used, and the way that it was read, that money would be used for capital campaigns. And the commission felt that capital campaign did not fall under a human services element.
Thank you.
And if you'd like, I can expand on that. When the subcommittee, and in the case of the CSSC, that was actually committee of the whole, when they first reviewed all of the submissions, they had multiple questions of several of the applicants, and at the subsequent meeting, the questions were trying to determine what the service element of the proposal was. It became even clearer at that meeting that the intent of the request was really for seed money, as it's been described tonight, and the commission deemed that not an appropriate use for the human services grants. And so that's why both hearings came to the same result, which was not recommending funding.
Okay. Well, I'll make a comment at this point. I didn't second the motion. I agree the Veterans Foundation is something very worthy, but my priority actually, if you recall, when I started my year as mayor, I set list of about six priorities, and one of them was senior services, working on our age-friendly goals that we got with our WHO age-friendly recommendation. And my concern when looking at this, cutting Live Oak Adult Services seems contrary to our age-friendly designated goals. This is a program that helps get older seniors out of the increasing isolation of their homes as their mobility decreases. So I really just can't live with decreasing their funding in light of what I set as goals. And then the second one is we're also reducing the grant to the 55 plus program, which I also think is contrary to this idea of socializing our aging seniors. So my thought was to restore 4,000 back to the Live Oak, and to actually give 6,000 additional to the over 55 on top of what's suggested. So I see frowns over there. So one was restore, and the other was restore plus a little bit more. 4,000 more for Live Oak and 6,000 more for the 55 plus, with this idea of trying to work towards our age-friendly goals, not decrease our age-friendly goals. Councilmember Jensen.
If that's a motion that
I'm willing to make that a motion,
that
yes.
makes those additions as enumerated on the Community and Senior Services Commission grant, attachment 3, but leaves the rest of the recommendations in place, I would second it.
Okay, that is my motion, and I have a second. Comments, thoughts? Councilmember Sack.
So I guess based on the silence, I'm struggling with this because, I mean, if money were no object, I'd love to be able to provide funds for everyone. We've identified areas that we had to cut because we were trying to be fiscally conscious and bring it down to the 90,000. I mean, one could make the argument that all of the services that are on this list are worthy of the amount at least requested. So let me just comment on the Veterans Memorial, since that's the largest one that does not have funds. I think I've mentioned many times that I'm completely supportive of the campaign that all of you are doing, but I do feel somewhat uncomfortable putting services funding towards a capital campaign. And if there was an opportunity to somehow have other funds in a different bucket towards a capital campaign, but given that it's designated specifically for services, I do find it difficult at this point to move that towards a capital campaign, and just for that reason I would not support moving it. I just don't think it would be fair given that the request was for services. But given that, I'm still thinking about whether or not to add another 10,000 towards the overall contribution of 93,000, but just did want to share that with all of the foundation members that are here tonight.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is always difficult. The town itself has far more debt than it can pay. It has far more expenses each year that it has to try and pay. And so that's just the town. And then when we get to these kind of donations, contributions, allocations, it's very difficult. Every single one of the items on these two lists are very, very worthwhile. I mean, extremely. And so then the commissions who made the recommendations are faced with, what decisions are you going to make? And it's a difficult decision every single time. And then you add another layer this evening where you have the Veterans Foundation coming forward, and that is obviously extremely important to our community. But I want to be supporting the motion, but the input I would give to the Veterans Foundation is that that your organization is new to the grant process. And I'm going to suggest a couple of things. I'm going to suggest that if it is a grant that you're looking for next time round, that you look at the definition of each type of grant and see if some aspect of your organization can fit within that. The second thing I'm going to suggest, and I have no idea if this would work, but I'm going to suggest that our town budgeting process is coming up in the near future, and you might want to look at giving input to the town on why possibly or how you can become part of a line item on that. Don't know if it'll work, but I think there's an educational process that your organization needs to tee yourself up on.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Spector. Let me see if Vice Mayor Leonardis, is he still on the phone or did we just lose him? Okay, so I won't be seen. We'll wait for the call back, I guess. Anybody else wish to comment while we wait? No? Okay. Okay, so Vice Mayor Leonardis, we are almost ready for a vote on the motion which adds $10,000 to the total community services grants, and it included $4,000 to bring Live Oak back to where it was last year, and $6,000 added to the 55 plus, which brings it, I think, $2,000 over last year. Okay. 4,000 over last year, something like that. Did you have any questions about maybe what you missed or any comments before we vote?
No, I just was cut off just towards the end of Council Member Spector's comments, so I heard everything, and then the line dropped. So I'm ready to move forward with the vote. I support what has been said so far, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, if I could have a roll call vote, please. And I guess for clarification, I think we're only voting on the CSSC grants.
I understood my second to be for both, that you were adding 4,000 to
that
Live Oak Adult Day Center and Rec 55 plus, but we're retaining all of the recommendations otherwise.
And you're the one that sort of suggested it to me, so yes, that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about both when we said we're only adding to these two.
That was my intention.
Okay, so I'm okay with that. So clarification on that. Then I will have unless council members have other confusion question, no. Go ahead with a roll call vote.
Councilmember Spector.
Yes.
Councilmember Sayoc.
Yes.
Mayor Rennie.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Leonardis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jensen.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. And that is our last agenda item, unless I can find any on the back of the page. If no further comments, then I will adjourn the meeting.